What's up guys? Now before I actually continue to tinker with our 6th generation system that we built and upgrading it to more modern kind of hardware, I thought there was one more test that I actually wanted to try, and that test was taking an older game from when this system would have actually been released and a newer version of that game and seeing how well the system holds up. Now, of course, inside this system, we have a 6th generation platform from Intel. We have the i7 6700 for anybody that watched the previous video. And we also have an Nvidia Geforce GTX 980 Ti. Both of those components would have come from around 2015. And for any of you out there that are big zombie game fans like myself, you may have been building a system just like this to play something like Dead Island. Now, Dead Island 1 originally released in 2011, mostly on the console, the Xbox 360 and PS3 days, but then they did actually release a remastered version called Dead Island the Definitive Edition. Now, the Definitive Edition was the much better one to play, to be honest. It was much more polished off, and I suspect a lot of PC gamers would have waited for that one. So that was actually released in 2016, and there was a good chance that you would have been building or at least had a system just like this to play that game. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to go and test that game, and then we're going to see how well it actually holds up when we test a Dead Island 2. Now, Dead Island 2 came out in around 2023 or early 2023. It took them years to actually produce that game, and it really showed when it came through. It was an extremely well detailed game that run pretty well on most hardware as well, so they did a pretty decent job on it. But the first thing we want to do is actually load up Dead Island 1 and see how well this system would perform back then, so we've got a bit of a comparison. Now, of course, back in 2016 when the Definitive Edition was actually released, this system still would have been considered a high-end gaming PC, so it should be able to play this game perfectly fine on all of the highest settings. We're just going to go check our options now, and we'll go to our video settings. We're going to leave it in a 1080p resolution because that's roughly what this machine would have been capable of back then and should be more than capable of today. We're going to leave the texture quality at high. In actual fact, we're just going to put the overall quality on high. We're going to click that best quality there. That will turn on all of the horrible things that I don't like, but that's okay. We'll see how it actually performs with it. As you can see from the screen, it's pretty blurry at the moment, and that is because of those extra settings that we configured. It should clear up as we move around, but we're actually getting a pretty decent performance here of around 130 FPS. What we'll do is we'll leave this little shack and we'll go off into the world where we'll kind of open up the map a little bit. The game still, in my opinion, looks pretty gorgeous, although compared to the new one, it's very slow paced. You do walk a lot very slowly, particularly when you kind of stepping sideways. It's a very slow paced game compared to the other one, but we do have a run button here and we'll sprint as much as we can. We'll head down to the beach because that's a pretty big open up area. As you can see, the game still looks stunning, and we'll run down to the beach. We'll find something to fight with, or at least get some things moving on the screen, and we'll see what happens to that FPS in the corner. We're now averaging around 152 frames per second, with the continuous going up to 100. So the further we look out into the distance, the higher that FPS goes up. And to be honest, this is providing a pretty decent gaming experience so far. We are now being chased by a zombie. We don't really want to get into too much of a fight. We're just doing a bit of a benchmark here. So as the more we look around, we can see that our average FPS is continuing to maintain itself at around 160 FPS, with a 1% low right now of 105. That would have been absolutely phenomenal back in the day. It means that this game would have performed exceptionally well on this system, and I would expect it to as well, to be honest. Being a high-end system, you would have paid through the nose for it, of course. Back then, it wouldn't have been as expensive as they are now, but it would have been a pretty decent figure that you would have spent on this system, so you would have expected to be able to play this game fine, and of course you still can. It's playing perfectly fine. There are no issues here. We're not getting any kind of major stuttering. Everything is working. Everything looks gorgeous. If we just turned off those extra settings to stop that weird blurriness and the film grain, it would actually look much clearer as well. But of course, we know that this game can play. So what about number 2? Can we get number 2 to play, or at least provide a pretty decent experience? The only way to do that is actually load up the game. Now, of course, because it took them so long to actually develop the game, things changed massively, particularly when it came to hardware. The original game had a recommended kind of requirement of around an R9 290, which was pretty decent back in the day, to be fair, and nowadays it's obviously a very low performing graphics card, up to the new one, which has a recommended requirement of an RX 6800 XT. There is a huge leap there, obviously, in graphics performance, so this game is a lot more demanding, and I'm hoping that we can at least get a reasonable experience, if anything. Now, unfortunately, this game is only available on Epic, and unfortunately they don't have like an online sync for your save files. It's a little bit annoying because every time we come to benchmark this on a different system, we have to re-download the whole game and then start from scratch and get through that initial piece in the game. That's exactly what we've done here. So this is technically where you first start in the open world. As we can see, we're currently getting an average of 89 frames per second, but we have some terrible 1% lows there of only 6 FPS. If we drop into the settings, we'll have a look at what we're actually configured to. We're going to display, we are still in a 1080p resolution, that's okay. We've got VSync and maximum frame rates turned off. We'll pop over to the advanced and just take a look at what we've got. We've got an overall quality here of high at the moment, so this should actually match the reasonable settings from the previous game, and we'll see how well it performs as we get into a more open area. We're now getting an average of 57 FPS on our 1% lows, but I'm having a feeling that that will actually drop quite a bit once things start happening. The average FPS at the moment is 83, 82, so in actual fact, the average FPS isn't too bad. We're getting them pretty decent. We're getting over 60 FPS, but as you can see, we're getting some flickering and artifacting on the screen over there where explosions are happening. So this card is being put under quite a bit of pressure at the moment. I really don't want to get into too much of a fight with these zombies, but let's see if we can actually smoothen this out and try to get a 60 FPS on those 1% lows. Dropping back into the settings here, I think the first thing that we should actually do is just drop that overall quality down to a medium setting. Usually that might just be enough just to trigger it off, but if we do need something else, we do have the AMD FX Super Resolution 2 that we could rely on if we wanted to. We'll go back now, save those changes, jump back into the game. Can we bring those 1% lows up? Well, at the moment they are running at around 79 FPS, and I don't really see that much difference in terms of quality of the game. See, it still seems to look pretty good, but what we'll do is we'll have a quick run around and we'll see if we get that 1% low to go up or down, see where it actually drops to, and tweak the settings even further if we actually need to. We're now running down the street here, and there's quite a bit actually going on, and those 1% lows are still looking pretty good. Just run past those zombies there. We've got a 1% low of 71 FPS with an average of 88. That's actually pretty impressive, to be honest, and really goes to show how long this hardware really does last. There is a major difference in between how these games came out and the years between them. We're talking around 2016 to 2023, so that's like 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, and this hardware is still actually performing exceptionally well. 1% lows now dropped to 68 FPS. That's still perfectly fine and perfectly smooth for gaming experience. I'm just going to kick this zombie off the roof there. That's it. We'll chuck them down there for a minute so they don't hassle us. There's some more on their way, but as you can see, this is providing a pretty decent experience. The graphics card is currently running at 98% utilization. That's okay, that's cool, that's fine. Although we do have a slightly high temperature here of 83 degrees C. Again, that's reasonably okay for the blower style cooler that we've got on our graphics card. If we had a AIB version with better fans, maybe that would actually be a little bit lower, but it's not causing us any issues. Everything is running fine. We're still running at 69 FPS on those 1% lows, as well as 94 FPS on the average. We'll pop down into this house here and we'll just see if we can get some more things moving on the screen. This game is reasonably dynamic. I actually love it. I played this game all the way through and I thought it was just fantastic. I did originally love the first one. I obviously completed it many times before, and it just provides a great experience, particularly for those who love that zombie kind of genre. Now, I've actually been impressed by this system. I just can't believe that it still stacks up today, particularly when it comes to some games like this. For those of you out there that are big zombie fans, you could build a machine like this today and it would play both of these games perfectly fine. If we did a little bit more tweaking to those settings, you know, set the VSync down, I expect anybody that is building a machine like this nowadays or still running a machine like this probably has a 1080p 60Hz monitor. You just set that VSync and we'll probably have a perfectly good smooth gameplay. This system continues to impress me with how long it's actually lasting. Of course, back in 2015 it would have been a very high-end machine, and that goes to show that if you do actually put some money into things, they do tend to last. Will that actually continue on into the future with hardware that we've got now? I'm not quite sure, because games are really ramping up how much demand they really do have. So again, we'll only be able to test that in the future. We'll never be able to test it right now. But apart from that, I'm pretty impressed with this machine. I hope you guys are too. Let me know in the comments below. Do you have a machine like this type of game that you're kind of playing? Are you having a decent experience? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because we're going to be doing even more to this system soon. We're going to be giving it some more upgrades. We're going to try and modernize it a little bit more, see how far we can actually take it, and see what kind of mistakes we can make. And I'm sure, as always, we'll catch you guys in the next one.